and welcome back to Brown Coat Reviews. I'm your host, Laura. Now here at Brown Coat Reviews, we offer comic book reviews, we go behind the scenes at different local comic book shops, live shows, and we go bargain shopping. That's right, we are going back to Ollie's. We also offer everyone's favorite comic book show, which is Married with Comics. That's right, that's where my husband and I will sit here and we are going to talk about the stories that he's reading, I'm reading, and we're reading together, and what it's like to be a married couple who both love comic books. I'll give you a little hint. It means we have a lot of comic books. So we have a lot of amazing content coming, so please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel because we are growing at an extraordinary rate and you're not going to want to miss any of our upcoming content. Now today I wanted to talk to you about a very specific problem that I have, which is Something is Killing the Children Withdrawals. So I decided against getting the individual issues of Something is Killing the Children, and I decided I was just going to wait for the series to be released. So I grabbed volume 1, finished it in one sitting, and was completely hooked. I had a lot of questions though, so I pretended to wait patiently until I could get volume 2. Volume 2 answered some of my questions. The problem was I have new questions and it ended on an amazing cliffhanger. So I have two options. I can either wait patiently for volume 3 to be released in a couple months, or I can pretend to actually have more patience and wait for the hardcover, which will collect issues 1 through 15, which is coming out this fall. That's a long time to wait. So I knew that I am not the only person going through this problem and trying to fill the time as we wait for the next release of trade paperback or hardcover of Something is Killing the Children. So I have two recommendations for those of you who are going through the same suffering syndrome that I am. I recommend reading Wytches, which is my personal favorite, and Hackslash, which is my husband's favorite. Now with Wytches, you have a monster in the woods, you have a community that is trying to explain what is happening to the disappearing children. And you have instead a family that is trying to defend, fight, and survive with this entity in the woods. Great series. It's written by Scottsnyder. Artwork is by Jock. It is, though, a self-contained novel. So you can read one graphic novel and be done, as opposed to going through our Something is Killing the Children withdrawals. Next option is Hackslash. We've all seen the horror movies where the killer puts on a mask and chases after a whole bunch of college students. Cassie Hack is a survivor who instead makes a point of traveling from town to town to find these slashers and to kill them and stop them. So yes, there are moments where she is going to pretend to be that alluring college student cheerleader, put herself as the damsel in distress, when in all reality she has a weapon hidden behind her back and she will take out the bad guys. She is actually much more snarky than Erica Slaughter. So if you think Erica Slaughter's funny, wait until you hear Cassie Hack. She is hysterical, and there's a lot of great banter in this story. Now we're going to start with my personal favorite, Wytches. Told you, of course, the artist and the author. What they are bringing to the story is Jock kind of creates this creepy world in the woods. And you just get this just eerie feeling of something's just not right. And then you get to our hometown and everything's normal. And you're always wondering, what is it in the woods that is making these children just disappear? So we have our Rooks family, which we have Charles, Sailor, and Lucy. Lucy is the mother, Sailor is the daughter, Charles is the father. Charles is a comic book writer, gotta love it, and Sailor is a teenage girl who is dealing with a lot of fear and anxiety. She's also just a little bit awkward, which just makes her a prime target for bullies. And we start the story off with Sailor gets the courage to go to school and she meets Annie. Annie's actually nice to her and Annie lures her out into the woods, and Annie pulls a gun. And she tries to make Sailor do something horrific. And Sailor stands up for herself, and she wishes her dead. And then something happens to Annie. And Annie is pulled away by something in the woods. And now Sailor is dealing with the grief of, was it her wish for the bully to stop what caused something to happen to Annie? Was this inevitable? Was there something that was always going to be grabbing either Sailor or Annie in the woods? Or is there something else going on that they need to be aware of that is hunting children in the woods? I mean, this story is definitely a suspense story. You're going to be kept at the edge of your seat. I'm going to keep rereading this as many times as I possibly can. I read this around Halloween, and it was perfect. A couple quick things about the storyline. Now, obviously, the artwork is phenomenal, and it just lets you just jump into this story of finding out what is going on. Are there witches in the woods? What does that mean? Why these children? There's so many millions of questions that you immediately go through just in that very first issue of something is going on in those woods, and what is it? You will finish this series with your questions answered, thank the Lord. But you can read this just as a suspense story, and it's very good. The other half of this story is the relationship between a father and daughter. Sailor, who has always been afraid, and her father, who has always helped her conquer those fears, and that special bond that the two of them have. And then you have her who, I mean, she has a legitimate reason to be frightened of the woods. And it's her father who helps her face those fears, and together they are taking on whatever is going on in these woods. So when you boil this down, this is a story about that relationship. And that's what makes this so special. I love Something is Killing the Children, but it does not have the same range of character depth and just growth and wonderful, just heartwarming moments that I love in this story, which make it more than just a slasher story. It's not just a monster tale. It is a story about a father and daughter and going through extraordinary circumstances. So highly, highly recommend it. The other reason why I love the trade on this one, if you've read other Scott Snyder stories, you'll notice that he does this, is he will put at the end, he'll kind of give a write-up for each one of the issues, sort of what inspired him, what started his journey, how it's been affected. I mean, he talks about his history with horror movies and suspense stories, and he gives a lot of great shout-outs and thanks to the fans. Just kind of shows the kind of person that he is. He also talks about how important that relationship was in the story of, you know, the father and daughter. And they give a lot of great, you know, concept art. So it's just, it takes, again, a story that was already great, and suddenly you get this great little insider view, and now you appreciate it even more. So definitely read the book, but read the interviews at the back. Love it. Hackslash. Now, I will admit, I saw the covers of this series, and my husband was loving it, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And finally, I'm like, all right, I'm going to give it a try. If you're ever going to try Hackslash, because there are omnibuses and there are so many different trades and issues, start with First Cut. This does give her origin story, and then you will notice typically in Hackslash, each one of the issues has a different story. So she will go to a new town, or a lot of times in the trades, if it's continuing to multiple issues, it's, again, still kind of self-contained within the series. So once you've got the origin down, then you can jump around in the series pretty well I've only read a couple issues, or a couple of the trade paperbacks. I'll tell you why in a minute. So I want to show you a couple things about the origin story. So of course we have Cassie Hack and we have Vlad. So I told you before that Cassie will sometimes dress up as, in this case, she dressed up as the cheerleader to lure out the bad guy and then stop him. And we find out why. So I am going to give away the origin story because it's 3 pages long and it's in the first issue and it is very important for the character. So this is Cassie as a child. This is her mother, who was a lunch lady at school, and any time that Cassie would get bullied, the bullies would magically disappear. When Cassie's mother was confronted about what was happening to these children, she puts her head in a vat of gravy. Cassie is orphaned, she moves on. However, she finds out that there are people who are being killed back at her small town, and the monster is in the shape of a lunch lady. Cassie goes back, finds out that her mother had come back as a slasher, and she stops her mother. So you find out that because of this instance, where she does take responsibility in some ways for something that she could not have controlled, but she was part of that situation. So she now decides that she's going to hunt down all of these slashers, killers, murderers, people who are taking advantage of a situation and are killing people. So you start with this very noble quest, and then you get the fun little twist. My favorite part is Vlad. So Vlad is a creature that originally she wasn't sure if he was a slasher, monster, bad guy. And she finds out that he's actually a good guy, and the two of them team up. So for me, I kind of picture that lurch, deep voice, or how I kind of picture Bane's voice that should be. And he doesn't say very much, but he does enough of that just sort of low, grumbling, back and forth banter that makes it hysterically funny. So Cassie, of course, is the witty one that is definitely the mouthpiece between the two of them. And then you have Vlad on the other side, who just counters her perfectly. It's very, very funny. Each of the stories, like I said, there will be, a new town, people who are dying, a mysterious occurrence is going on. Sometimes it's supernatural, sometimes it's not. And she goes in, she takes care of the monsters. She does it with a bit of witty repartee, and all is well in the end. Now, the big question of why have I only read 2 or 3 of these? It is good. I'm not going to deny that it is not good and it's not fun writing. The problem I have with this is a similar issue I had with Lady Mechanica. It's a good story and it's fun, and you just jump into it and you're just like, okay, finally it's our Buffy the Vampire Slayer twist on these traditional stories of the girl's going to be running from the guy with, the blade. The problem that I have is that after a while, you're smiling, you're laughing, you're enjoying, and then for me, I've got to take a break. And I flip over to something else. And then I come back to hackslash eventually. So this series is good, it's enjoyable, it's a little fluffy, because it's meant to be. It's making fun of all those B-rated horror movies that everyone has seen. So there's a lot of good there. It's just because most of the individual stories are kind of self-contained, it's rare that one of these monsters or slashers that she is killing survives long enough to make it to the next issue or the next story arc. So because of that, the nature of the story doesn't have a lot of complexity, at least as far as I've read. It may change its tune later on. I'm just not there yet. So for me right now, it's fun. I do wish sometimes that Cassie Hack's witty banter would translate a bit better over to Erica Slaughter. Because Erica Slaughter's kind of funny. Cassie definitely gets me giggling. So there are little elements that I wish would hit Something is Killing the Children. And maybe we'll get there. So overall, listen, Something is Killing the Children is an amazing series. We all love it. We cannot get enough of it. But if you are trying to fill the time, these are two alternatives that my husband and I have really enjoyed. So the big question is which series in that kind of dark and twisty monsters realm are you reading instead? Or have you just given up on monsters' dark and twistiness and have you flipped genres completely? How are you passing the time while you wait for the next trade or hardcover of Something is Killing the Children? This is Laura from Brown Coat Reviews, and I will see you all next time.